Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carissa Crown, and I am an exercise science major. I'm just going to be talking a little bit about angular velocity and how that concept applies in sports, specifically baseball, and how the pitcher is able to throw the ball. So before we get into the more specific details, we want to define what angular velocity actually is. So angular velocity is defined as the rate of velocity at which an object or particle is rotating around a center or a specific point in a given time period. So just to show you all a little drawing of this to make it easier, if you look up at the top right of the slide, you can see a little center point, and then you're going to have and this is not a perfect circle, but just pretend that it is, and your object is going to be traveling around this center point in a circle, and the speed, or actually the velocity that the object is traveling around this fixed point, is going to be your angular velocity. So an example of this concept in the sports world would be the velocity that results when a baseball player winds up his arm to throw a baseball. And this is a good example because the shoulder joint is actually the center point in this example, and the hand holding the baseball would be the object rotating around this center point. In the next few slides, we're going to go through some of the biomechanical terms, and we're going to start with movement. So when the pitcher is swinging their arm around, they're going to switch between flexion, extension, and hyperextension, and that can be seen in the sagittal plane view. And because of the way the arm and its joints are structured, there's also going to be some supination and pronation taking place in that forearm so that the joint does not become overly stressed. The arm and the ball are the objects rotating around the center, and the center in this example is going to be the shoulder joint. And you're going to have the baseball and the hand rotating around the shoulder. And since the joint is a ball and socket joint, it is really effective for this type of movement that you're wanting to get. So here are the names of some of the muscles, bones, and joints that are going to be used in this specific type of movement. So for muscles, you're going to have your deltoids, hips, glutes, abdominal muscles, latissimus dorsi, triceps, and some other ones too, but those are the main ones. And for bones, you're going to have your carpals, your metacarpals, your ulna, radius, humerus, and various bones in the legs and feet. But for this presentation, we're just focusing more on the arm. For joints, you're going to have your shoulder joint, which is that ball and socket joint that allows that really good range of motion. You're going to have your wrist, spine, your knee, ankle, elbow, and when you are wanting to maximize the upper arm velocity and the angular velocity at the elbow joint, that elbow joint is going to be more important for getting your maximum ball velocity than the angular joint at the wrist. And that is just because there's more motion taking place in the elbow joint than the wrist joint for this particular movement. But we will talk about that a little bit later in one of the next slides. So here's a video that explains the concept of angular velocity in a little bit more detail. And also this picture is nice to just visualize how you have your center point, and then all the joints working together and this baseball traveling around the shoulder in a circular motion. This is a chart that just explains the relationship between force and angular velocity. So as it shows here, as the force increases on your object, your angular velocity is also going to increase, and vice versa. So they increase at the same in the same direction. Related to force, we're going to have muscular power, and muscular power is more generally defined as the rate of torque production at a joint, or the product of the net torque and the angular velocity at the joint. So in other words, the higher your angular velocity, the stronger your pitch will be. And angular velocity occurs in each joint as it rotates around its axis. And the total angular velocity that you're going to get is going to be the net velocity of all the joints working together to throw the ball. So you're going to have your shoulders angular velocity, your elbows, your wrist, and those are all going to add together. You get the net angular velocity, which will be your total angular velocity. So just like any other sport, there are injuries that can happen in baseball, and the faster that the pitcher is able to throw the ball, the better it is, because it's harder for the opposing batter to hit it. But the shoulder joint can be pretty easily damaged if this action is done incorrectly. And there's been some research just looking at the damage that can happen to the shoulder joint in baseball, and pitching was the most common cause of shoulder injury, and those type of injuries can be like tensile rotor cuff failure, compressive rotor cuff disease, labrum tears, bicep tendonitis, and there's other ones, but those are the main ones that occur when this joint is overexerted. To prevent these injuries from happening, you can do muscle conditioning or warm-ups to prep for that high velocity movement, and just special care should always be taken when you're exerting those joints more than you usually would in sports, because it can cause strain. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video is helpful and that you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.